In this video, we will create a simple island terrain in Gaea. We will colorize it with texture sat maps. We'll add trees. We'll colorize rivers and have a complex ocean. Here we are in a new Gaea project. We'll start with a primitive for our simple island. I'm going to choose range. One note about it is the reason range is a good starting point is the relative height above the baseline. This plane right here is small. So once we fold these corners over to reveal our landmass above a water surface, it's not going to be crazy. Whereas if we use something like multifractal, it's way up high. And to illustrate this, I'll go ahead and mark it 0 borders. This is the next node to create the island that I'm going to use. And I'm changing to square. And you can see how it pushed the corners down, but most of the map is still in above board. Whereas if we go with multifractal, it's crazy. And maybe you want something that's cliffy like that, but in my case, I think range is a better starting point. So from 0 borders, what we can do is erosion. In some cases, you may like the generated rock structure, but I like to erode it to kind of give it a settled, aged look. From here, we can add rivers if you want that, and that'll increase the flows and give you, in your height map, an imprint of where your rivers can flow. And one great thing about this is if you're using RAM auto material, you can use the simulate tool really magically. It'll find its way to the ocean as long as your texture map or your height map resolution is high enough for it to be a smooth imprint, indentation in the terrain in Unity. After rivers, we'll go to sea. We're going to change level to 3%. We're going to change shore size and shore height also to 3. And that just tucks that in a little bit better. If we're happy with this island, we can continue, but I think in my case, you can either reduce the ocean some more, or we can change the seed. And notice when we went back to the range node, it changed the terrain so much it's hard to tell what's going on. So one trick is to choose our final output and hit F, and that'll create a green dot. Another way is to right click and choose pin, and that's going to lock this view on the final output. Then we can click back over here and change the seed around, and it'll regenerate different islands. Okay, this is a little more interesting. Another thing we can do while we're here is bump up the height, and that'll give it more pronounced features. So now that we have a island height node, unpin it. And one thing I like to do is do a surface node, which is, it kind of sharpens, it accentuates the rock protrusions. It's not like the sharpen node, which enhances everything. It is almost like a little more intelligent. So for surface, but to me this effect is a little too extreme from where we came from. So I like to change the strength in half to 12. But it gives us a little more information on our height. Now what we can do here is go ahead and bump our resolution up to the max for the community version, and that's 1K, and it'll regenerate that at a higher resolution. So now that we have our finished island, this is what the river node did. You may want to change the seed if that's not appealing. and it might give you another flow. It looks like it's going to cut through there anyway, but that's a little less subtle, or a little less invasive on that cliff face. So here we go, we have our surface prepared. Now if we want to texture this in Gaea, we'll pin as underlay. We right click or click G and choose pin for underlay, and then we can feed that into a texture node. And that'll set up the terrain rules for a sat map. And whatever biome you're wanting to recreate, there's some that could emulate snow, or here's kind of a desert badlands area. I'm going to choose a green palette, and what I'm looking for is a little bit more deeper green, but also that the rock protrusions is a rock-like texture. So we're clicking through here and we're going to look for one that's getting there. If you've got one that's close but it's a little off still, you can adjust the bias and it might give you profit. See here, now we have green on the surface of the rock, and that's what I was trying to avoid. So we'll go with this one, but I'm going to look for another sat map that gives me the green I want down here, because we can combine these. I'll go ahead and change that to green again. That's interesting effect. Let's see what that looks like combined. I didn't anticipate a blue, but it's a little strange, but I think I'm going to go with it. We're going to apply some trees. In fact, we can go ahead and do that right now, because if we use the arboreal node, it actually changes our height map data. And this is more for the rendering. We wouldn't want to export the position of all these generated trees, but it'll give our final look a little bit more realism if we take the height map. So if we pin this as our new underlay, we need to feed that to our texture. I'm going to move everything over so it's clear. Now in our combined color we have our trees included. That doesn't look so good. It's just sort of arbitrary, but we have a colorized node on our arboreal, so to color one of these outputs we'll use clutter. And we'll choose, for white, we'll actually choose a deep green, maybe something like that. And that will, if we add it, that'll color our landscape. Okay, so first of all, we have trees up here that may be desirable for you, but I think I'm going to reduce the height that trees can occur. So as we bring the altitude max down, our cliff, our bluff can appear. And we can reduce the altitude fall off to tighten up the gradient between trees and no trees. And in this case, we have some trees that are kind of dipping down onto the beach, so we can increase the altitude minimum. We find that. That's peeling it back a little bit. I think our fall off is still a little too high. So I'm going to give us more minimum. We'll go with that. So our combined land mass with our tree cover gives us something like this. To do the ocean, we have some outputs on our C node. In fact, we can even mask, believe it's, let's see which one it is. We can mask to prevent trees in our rivers. It looks like it's already doing that. I don't notice much of a difference. We can color our river by pulling on the output for, I believe it's depth, and type FX. This is a trick that I learned from Klaus, who's also on YouTube, that does Gaea tutorials. So if we come out of the export into an FX and we click level, and it'll reveal where our rivers are. And then from that point we can color those. Freshwater color. And coming out of our C, we can do the same thing. FX, and that'll show us what it's doing, and it's everything below the water surface. Now in this case we have the water surface rendering. If we don't want to see that, we can uncheck that and it'll reveal the terrain underneath the ocean floor. But we also have the rule, the data rule that we'll use. We'll do the same for depth. And we could just simply color the ocean blue, but we could, since we have the depth node, this is another one you have to level to reveal what it's doing. We can take our ocean color one step further, and that's by subtracting our sea. We're subtracting the depth from the sea. So the deeper parts are black, and then our depth is the deeper parts are light. So now we have two color rules for everything regarding the ocean. And the fact that we subtracted it means they won't override, they won't kind of mix together. We can set them more precisely. So for our shallow water, we'll go into a clutter node, and we'll pick a blue. And for our deep water, we'll do a clutter. And pick a darker blue. So now we have a dark blue and a light blue. Now that we have two color nodes, we can combine them with the color combine. And we'll add those. And that gives us a slight gradient. If we want to enhance that even more, we can brighten the blue. For a combine, and that shows the difference after we combine it. So it's more of a gradient. It has a little more detail. Now our river, we don't want our river to show underwater, under the ocean. So before we try to combine the river with our landmass, which would look like this, add it. That's not going to look right if we then combine it with our ocean. So we can mask our ocean. So this is our ocean rule. This is the combine between our land and our river. And I think it's just as easy. Ah, okay, I think I know why. So this is our river rule. The river rule goes all the way to the end of the map. But if I mask that, it looks like the mask needs to be inverted, because what it's doing is giving us the river map below the ocean. So the way we do that is invert. And we could even come off of C, but I'm just being consistent here. So we have our everything under the ocean. We're inverting it to give us everything above the ocean, and then we can mask our river rule to give us all the rivers above the surface of the ocean. And that'll result in something a little more nicer. Now what's odd here is our colorized terrain goes below the surface of the ocean, is washing out our beautiful sapphire seas. So the way to fix this is a little crazy, but it seems to work. What we want is our rich oceans and our colorized landmass where they don't bleed together. So the only way that I've found to do this is to, now this is the land only with our rivers. We're combining it with blend. We're leaving it on blend, but we're taking it to 100%. So again, this was added. We added, in this case, we blended to 100%. That gives us this. And then we'll combine these two. And that'll be changed to add. But then we need to mask from this node. We want to cut away the ocean and only use our blue ocean. So to do that, we are going to utilize the mask input of our combine, and we're going to put the inverted C. So there's our C, comes out of our C node, and the inverted is our land. So we're going to mask that, and that gives us our deep blue gradient ocean with everything. To take this one step further, we can use the beach output. There's a couple ways to do the beach. Sometimes the beach output is enough, other times there's another way to pinpoint it, but we're going to go with this. And then from here we clutter to give a sandy maybe something like that. Now if we go ahead and combine this as is, it'll give us this effect. We can adjust the blend. Actually, we probably want to add what's going on here. Oh, there we go. I had my input swapped. So this is our where we were. We want to add in a sand. If we do screen, we can adjust the ratio until it gives us something that we want. But if you're not liking this this bleed through, one thing to do is to blur our data map. That helps a little bit. The other way is to use a height node. Actually, it needs to come off of our final height map rule. And we'll go with this way because this is just kind of messy. It bleeds over. Sometimes the terrain, it's a good one to work with. Okay, so for the height rule, we want to turn fall off down. And then we want to go to minimum to see. So we need to try to target just that flat shelf. So we need to bring our height down. Okay, it's between 3 and 4, so we'll say 3.5. Okay, 3.2. 3.15. And you can type precise numbers, but it's going to round it up. If you can see, it just says 3. And then our height, we're going to say 2.8. A little bit higher, 2.95. And if we want to compare to the original, you can see that it's a little tighter and neater. If it's still too extreme of an edge, we can throw a blur on there, and that'll just kind of soften that out. So to make this a little more interesting, because what it's going to do, like it did here, is it's going to paint it an even color. But what we can do is come off of that same output and put a texture. So it's another texture rule, and use our height rule as a mask on the texture rule. And what that does is add a texture to our beach that matches the rules of the terrain. So from here we can feed that to our clutter. And now check it out. And the height rules can be tightened up even more, but I think that's okay for now. That gives us a beach, rivers, 2 depths of an ocean. It gives us our colored terrain with trees. Other steps we can take, we can put a skybox. We can add a little bit of atmosphere. And of course, bump up in our viewport for Gaea. We can bump up to 2K. Now in the community version we can't export 2K, but if all you're needing is, if you just want some kind of image to represent your terrain at this stage, we can generate that. Okay, so this is what it came up with for 2K resolution. There's our trees. We have our ocean. And lighting and shading. That's what you can expect. There are other trees. These are conifers if we want to change to broadleaf. I actually like that because it looks more to scale than those large trees. But height can be adjusted on those as well. Okay, and there's the output. That's what we have. So we'll stop the video here. I'll pick up with another one where we're actually targeting all of this data for exporting to stuffing into an RGB color masks, and we can build a Unity terrain from that. I hope this was helpful, and stay tuned for more tutorials.